Well, thank you all for being here. Before we start, I'd just like to acknowledge the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people of this land, the original inhabitants and current inhabitants of this land, who have generously allowed all of us to gather here and be here. I'd also like to acknowledge the non-human and the beyond human, and all the invisible labor that happens to actually make us, allow us to exist here, literally exist here and breathe here and live and survive and thrive here. My name is Elwood Jimmy. I'm currently based in Toronto, Ontario. I'm originally from northwestern Saskatchewan. I grew up in my father's home community. It's a First Nations community called Thunderchild, but I've lived in Toronto off and on now for about 8 years. I've spent about 20 years working as an artist, a writer, a curator, and a programmer. A lot of my practice are within those milieus. Has taken a different kind of shift over, I would say, the last 3 to 4 years. A lot of my work as a curator, as a programmer, as an artist, as a writer, is really trying to presence and center the earth within those practices and within my engagement with contemporary art. So a lot of that work has taken me to different parts of the world, working with different communities and community and relational art practices, more embodied practices that try to kind of recalibrate connections within communities and within each other and with the land. So I've been working doing a lot of these more embodied practices, but I was extended this invitation by the Queer Arts Festival several months back, I would say around December, January, to curate this space. I had been working as a visual media arts curator for several years, but I hadn't really done that for about 2 or 3 years because I was doing work kind of outside of institutions, outside of kind of this contemporary art system that's really kind of calibrated in a vertical way. But a lot of my work I feel is working in more horizontal ways with communities. So I took the challenge, and I was thinking what I'm doing now, what would that look like, feel like, sound like within this kind of context, and how do you represent that within kind of two-dimensional art or media art or in a space like this? Like how would that look in a space like this? How does that translate? What does get translated? What does not get translated? What becomes legible? What becomes illegible in terms of a visual representation and a visual culture of that kind of way of being and way of knowing within the world. So it was a very condensed time to actually kind of consider some of the inquiries I was interested in. This all came together quite quickly, maybe in about 4 months. It's the kind of shortest amount of time that I've had to kind of pull something together, and I'm really thankful for the Queer Arts Festival, Sid, and the whole team for really bringing this together and really holding a space where we were able to pull these things together in a very quick and very organized and I would say a generative way. Sometimes when things in times of conflict or stress or crisis, that's when things tend to fall apart. And this is one of the things I think about as well in terms of my own practices. Who we are is revealed in times of scarcity, in times of crisis, in times of conflict. So I'm interested in practices, whether they're artistic or spiritual or life practices, where who we are, we can be our most generative selves in these times, and it's very polarizing, very divisive times that we live in. So this is just to give you a little bit of a context of my process for putting this show together. I'm thankful for the artists that are here tonight. I'm actually tired of talking, and I'm still talking, so I'm going to try have the artists talk as much as possible tonight. Thank you, Raven. Thank you for being here. I would like to, maybe we can do a bit of a round. One of the first things I may throw out to all of you, and that you could all take a few moments to answer, is just who you are, a little bit about your practice and the work that's in the exhibition. So maybe, would you like to start, Raven? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, sure. It's also
There's also this too. Yeah.
It's also going to be like one of the more interesting stories, no offense, because my piece got stolen today.
I heard.
Yes.
Which is great because, you can't leave anything native unattended for any amount of time. So the piece I have is a bit of, the land itself is actually seated.
Should we move?
Being lent over to.
I'm sorry.
where it's-
What if we move and
Yeah,
you sit here?
just because I'm conscious of we don't have a mic and some people, myself included,
Oh,
lip
sorry.
read, and I just feel like if anyone in
sure.
the audience
Even
needs
at the
to read
back.
lips, I don't want them to miss what you're saying.
I don't mind this please.
I'm just struggling with this thing. All right. Yeah, so the piece I have is a little bit of land from my territory, and Yokoyaya, a local dollar store that I love. And through a pair of headphones that are connected to it, you can listen to the earth, and through that form, you can listen to some audio clips from Smoke Signals, a tribe called Red, some music from a local artist I love that is also queer and indigenous, Quigay, and what else is on there? Song's called Time Immemorial. It has like uncredited indigenous singing on it it's like from the 90s. So yeah, there's like a lot of stuff on there, as well as like an interview with a residential school survivor. So it's a bit of a mixed bag as to what you'll get when you try and listen to it. I did bring my first iteration of the project by this evening, so you can listen to it on some of my early work.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jess, would you like to talk?
Hi, my name is Jess, and it's been a wonderful time here in Vancouver. I'm currently based in Toronto. I read Elwood's curatorial statement before knowing I would get invited to be a part of the show, and it was really, it really spoke to a lot of like intimate conversations I've been enjoying with close friends who I also work with, and it was a really compelling, set of thoughts, and so the work that I brought as a part of this show has to do with, it does definitely have to do with relationships and care and conversation that is ongoing while using the medium of industrial signage and kind of personifying it in both, cheeky and nonsensical ways. And it's been a series that's been ongoing since 2017, but always kind of in a diptych or a triptych kind of call and answer conversation with either other artists. I had a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with artist Fallon Samard, who typically does non-material work, and got annoyed at me for making him do material for him. It's always been kind of an opportunity to kind of either talk to myself or talk to somebody else or talk to past selves. And I really love the cadence of seeing my work in conversation here, but also, with the space, and then also with the rich volume of other artists. Yeah.
Maybe we could talk with Alexandra. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, so I'm Alexandra Gelis. I'm Colombian, Venezuelan, based in Toronto. I have a really strong accent. Louder? Okay. Louder. Yeah, thanks. Alexandra Gelis is my name. So my work is the one that is in the back. It's the interactive work, and it is in collaboration with my mom, Cristina Lombana. She's here. Gracias. So I really want to say thank you. Thanks, Elwood. Thanks to see to the group, to the festival, because it's been really special to me, like to show this work here, or for us to show this work. Oh, thanks, Bobby. Please. Because this work is kind of a special, kind of different to the kind of work that I was doing before. I wasn't really ready to show, and then Elwood contact me because it's a work that is still in process. Like, contact me and send me the text. And I said, wow, it's a queer festival in Vancouver, so it's on the other side of Canada. But when I read it, it's like, yes, this is exactly what I've been thinking. And thank you, I'm so thrilled to be part of this show. What you are seeing now is part of our process of healing for the last years, fighting for cancer. Fighting against the pharmacy and the system and a pharmacology that is telling you, don't say the word cancer. Cancer is the last thing. Cancer is dead. And when my mom called me like 2 years ago, she said, Ale, cancer is a word that you have to name it. And I started crying and crying and crying. It was like, I'm not used to it, and I live in Toronto, which is even way more taboo, the word. And a week later, I say I can't cry anymore. The only thing that I know how to do is work with medicinal plants, which I was already working a lot with it, trying to understand what to do with this huge word. And then I say, the only thing that I know how to do is work with cameras. So from that moment, we start a process of 2 years with cameras, with different cameras, from Super 8 to drone to whatever camera you can name it, in the hospitals and here cameras. But mainly as a way of getting to understand what cancer is, the importance of talking about cancer, and the different relationships. No? So cancer is not I learned that cancer is not that capitalist definition that it has kind of a military way of thinking where you have to fight against something that you have to just kill with a lot of chemicals. And it's like, no. It's about relationships. It's about relationships between us even. It's been hard. It's so hard to work with your mom. You know, the mothers and daughters relationship, this is not easy. But this work really been like it's been helping us to getting closer. So what you're seeing here is just the last part, I can say. We have a lot of material. It's going to be maybe a documentary. This is just the beginning. One day I say, Mom, can I record you? And please, can you talk about cancer? And she said, Ale, I can't talk anymore. Like, I'm so tired. I say, okay, so we're going to tell the story in a different way. So all the, like the performance of the actions that you're seeing is part of that dialogue.
So my name is David Ng. I'm the co-artistic director of Love Intersections, which is a media arts collective of queer artists of color. Our primary mandate is to share the stories of queer queer people of color, and we're currently we started off doing mostly a short documentary. So my piece is the one right there, the 2-channel installation, and it's the first time actually that we've ever forayed into this medium. As I mentioned, we've primarily have done short documentaries by invitation from different underrepresented communities under the sort of queer umbrella. The piece, so the installation is a part of a longer experimental documentary that we're doing on the local drag artist. Her name's Made in China. And the film's called Yellow Peril Queer Destiny, and it explores queer Chinese diasporic identity. And through the metaphor of the 5 elements in Chinese culture. And so the reason for that is we wanted to move away from sort of Western conceptions of gender and sexuality, and we wanted to sort of look at other embodied ways, metaphysical ways of looking at gender and sexuality. And we found that the 5 elements were a really powerful way that we could be exploring queerness, exploring culture, and contemporary queer Chinese identity, not as sort of a thing in the past, but sort of what is being forged. Because as racialized people, our cultures are often like, oh, this kind of thing that happened in the past. But we wanted to talk about it in a contemporary way. So the film, the experimental documentary is broken up into the 5 chapters. In the installation, there's just the first 3. And it sort of explores different nuances of queer Chinese culture. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple of things that came up that while I was listening to all of you speak was, in particular, I like when you talked about Christine, you say, I'm tired of talking. Like, it's something that for me, it becomes less and less engaging as I kind of work within the contemporary art milieu, is just having our relationships kind of within this bracket here. We tend to intellectualize so many things when I think a lot of the issues that we all face collectively as a body of people that are all on this part of the planet, we can't seem to get out of this particular kind of intellectual space where we can't reach across to actually see each other as like human beings, and also that connection to the earth. Like, I work with a woman, Vanessa Andriotti, who works at UBC. Like, we've been working together very intimately over the last couple of years. Herself in kind of global education and citizenship, myself in contemporary art, and how we're both kind of interested in her in the university and myself in contemporary art. How do we recalibrate? How do we unnumb what she would call exiled capacities? Like, we work with a lot of indigenous communities, and a lot of these communities that we work in, some will say we have 10 senses, some will say we have 99, some will say they have 1,000 senses that have all been kind of numbed within kind of a capitalist and colonial structure. And why is it that 5 have seemed to have arisen and privilege within this culture? So a lot of the work that I'm thinking about and feeling, I just said thinking about, and I'm trying to unlearn that word in my vocabulary, because we privilege that. Even language has power. So I always notice when people now, whenever they say, like, they could be saying I feel or I believe, but it's always I'm thinking. But it's like, with thinking, we thought our way into this mess. We're not going to be able to unthink our way out of it. We have to come up with different strategies of relating with one another and relating to the land, and finding those exile capacities and those attunements and those entanglements with each other and with the non-human and the beyond human. I guess maybe it's a question that I'll just kind of throw out to people is, and you mentioned like embodied practice and metaphysical practice. How does that resonate with you, first of all? And then if it does, like how is that translated into the work that you bring to say this space or other spaces?
I can start. One of the things that we experimented with is, and again, I come from documentary, and this was sort of the experiment that we were doing, is we started the filming actually with performance. And rather than sort of trying to articulate the storyline, we started with bringing our bodies to different sites in Vancouver, in the places where we're from, to do to similar to what you're talking about, try to get away from the intellectual articulations of gender and sexuality, and so actually what is showing right now, we did a site activation at Larwell Park, which is just the parking lot on Georgia and Cambie. That was the gathering site of the anti-Oriental riots in 1907, and we performed an ancestral veneration ceremony there. Then that was actually, it's the second chapter in the film, but it was the first ceremony we did because we really wanted to sort of start from that place, and I think from there it allowed us to feel more about what direction the film was supposed to go. And we felt that it was important to sort of also recognize the ancestry and the temporal relationship that our work in terms of wanting to talk about gender and race and sexuality was connected to. So yeah, that's what comes to mind.
For me, I like to work with like a variety of different materials and call them native and challenge anyone who wants to say or think that they're not native, because I kind of approach it with the same people are built differently. We don't have to understand it. We just have to respect it. And I've seen that argument a lot when it comes to like gender and gender identity, and I want to kind of put that same argument towards like indigenous queer folks and the work that we make. And I definitely feel like we have to place ourselves in this super academic and heavily critical field to be validated, and not even just as queer folk, but as like indigenous folk and people of color. I feel like we're constantly having to pay that black tax. And for myself, I don't want to be rude to like my peers in general, but after doing a lot of thinking, I realized that the people of color that, and specifically indigenous people that I come across in my fields, like, are spectacular. They're above and beyond. They're academic. They're performers. They're often like language revivalists. They're artists. They're musicians, all at the same time. Sorry. And same with the people of color that I see in even just my regular Joe jobs. And what I don't see is the expectation that the white folk in those same fields having to live up to. It's kind of ridiculous that like the only POC that make it, the only queer POC that make it are exceptional. And I think that's like something we don't think about a lot. And we don't expect from our white peers. And I definitely feel that, especially within the artist realm, that we have to be overly academic to be considered.
Your words really resonate in my, like the words of Elwood really resonated in the process, you know, of work. I don't know where to start. Like, I can feel like every single part of this process, it's been about finding relationships, you know, relationships between my mom and her body, my mom and the environment, and the soil, the plants, the food that she's been eating, that we prepare with my brother every day. Like she drinks, like 3 juices in the morning that are like a specific colors. So the power of the red is gonna give you, is cleaning you. The power of the orange, which comes from fruit, really fresh, and vegetable fresh. So the orange is giving her more strength, and then the green is the chlorophyll, so it's the power of the plant, no? And then from there to where we film, so every single moment of those videos were no plant, so we're the reaction to the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, where we were in Panama. So she lives there. If we were in Panama, so how to encounter a different kind of relationship or different kind of connection with the water. So you see the videos in the water. Then the houses, the strongest ones are in a house. We've been working for the last 6 years with youth, documenting the gentrification process of the old Panama. So they help us to film also. So some of the videos are like 3 cameras. So they also help us to, the restraint was also part of the process. And the Super 8 and the 16 millimeters was like, I also need to feel the matter. Like if I'm kind of writing or thinking with video, I need to write with film, but I need to write with film that I'm processing, no? So the film is hand processed. Yeah? So, yeah. And also it is an invitation of you as an audience to go and experience it almost in a no-linear way, which it's been our own process also. Yeah.
I think for me, having started out, I guess like a decade ago within queer community in the medium of self-portraiture, and then moving away from depicting the body at all. The last 2 years in particular, maybe even 2.5, has felt like an exercise in untangling the, I guess, institutional language within the disability academy and art canon silos, like unpacking it and challenging ideas of like universal design or universal language. And it's the notion that there can be some sort of perfect architecture or perfect statement or declaration that then cosigns any future ongoing relationship building or work, and untangling that from the machine of whiteness and white supremacy and this idea that like invitations to be included, in particular white disabled people, are actually just a reinforcement of the very buildings that have that harsh architecture that does not care. The care is a surface and very bodily disconnected gesture that is more about a phrase I've been using that came out of a rather upset and poetically penned email to the last museum I worked with. I called it the Architectures of Liability, because the gesture of inviting me in to create public art became so institutionally traumatic to the point that it arrived at a place where not only did I not end up getting paid for any of the labor in a project of a $10,000 scale, but there was such a fury that, these sculptures of ramps of all things just did not bend to the feelings of the museum, which were all over the place. And it was really heartbreaking, as an artist when you care about what you do, but also to feel like I'd in some way become the museum for a second by trusting it all that, you know, placing work in a context was going to be the same as a human relationship, even when you're dealing interpersonally with people. And yeah, that was particularly hard. But at the same time, I think necessary in terms of getting back to a place of thinking about my connection, I guess, to language from a place of poetry and from a place of evoking feeling and evoking an exchange that doesn't have to be sensible or legible and is about, I guess, slowness and listening more than it is about stating. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what Raven said as well, what Raven contributed and shared to this space, you know, in terms of relationships between like settler and indigenous people and how that plays itself out. A lot of the work that I do in the last few years has been with a foundation where there was I work for a private foundation called Gelis. They're based in Southern Ontario. I was hired as their indigenous hire because they had, I felt like they maybe got caught up in a wave of decolonizing and wanting to indigenize their space, their foundation. And I was thinking a lot about the expectations of what decolonization and what indigenization looks like on these different, from these different, very different perspectives and worldviews. And very early on, the relationship kind of just collapsed. It fell apart. And but I think, to the organization's credit, you know, they didn't want to replicate that narrative. They actually wanted something different. So I've been working with them, trying to move in different ways, and not so much moving forward, but actually sitting with the complexities of what you've talked about. You know, it's. I feel like within this kind of narrative that we call, or place we call Canada, there's a particular narrative that all of us, I think, do suffer like some trauma from, or whether you're indigenous, or whether you're a white settler, and not to say that that trauma is evenly distributed. It's not at all evenly distributed, but nonetheless, we have to actually look at like the trauma from all sides, and how do we build stamina? How do we build resilience to also to face other people's traumas, but then to also recognize ours? You know, because one thing I kind of find within navigating the world, like the first 15, 20 years of my art career, I was like, you know, you get tired of being seen as the deficient one, even though you're doing so many things to be exceptional, just to be at the table, you know. So, but still, you're seen as like the deficient one, you know, when there's a room full of yourself and other people. And so, I also want to just acknowledge there are a couple of other indigenous female-identified artists, Thurza Cuthand and Raven Davis, and of course your work, which I really wanted to presence also in this space because, again, for instance, Raven Davis' work was made in response to the announcement that they were going to do an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, and the text you see on that particular video is she just was reading an article, and it was just hateful comment after hateful comment. So that's what you see, you know. And I wanted to kind of presence that within this space because if I'm wanting to talk about, you know, generative relationships, we also have to be honest of where we are at this particular point in time. And so I wanted to include that just as a reminder that, you know, myself and my colleague Vanessa say people talk about this era of reconciliation, but we're not even at zero yet. We're nowhere near zero, and we have to kind of remind ourselves that we tend to underestimate the problem and overestimate our solutions to the problem. So these are one of the things that I wanted to just respond to what you said, just in terms of this space and what's in the show, and how do we start moving towards zero, you know, when because I think like people like to think that we're surpassed that, but no, we're not at zero. We're nowhere near. Anybody in this room, we might not even, in anybody's lifetime in this room, we might not even see zero. So, and to add to that, I work a lot with a healer that Vanessa works with a lot too. Her name is Mama Maria. She's based in Peru, and to add a very profound layer to that notion of zero, she's like, once you get to zero, you stay at zero. You actually don't try to move up, because it's again, it's a colonial trap. It's like when you're at zero, that's when things are balanced, and that's where we have to kind of recalibrate ourselves to sit with, you know, and to be with each other at that level, and not try to, you know, move. And again, because, you know, if we start moving in this vertical calibration, we're just replicating the system again. So to take it back from around that, but to a lot of what I feel that you have all brought is something that gestures towards that in very significant and meaningful ways for me. And in particular, this notion of care, that I think that that's kind of one of the things I find that's interwoven with all of your work. So I would like to talk about care, and in terms of, in relation to your work, and what that, how that guides the work, or how you see that kind of functioning or thriving, say, within a system that's not historically been so much about care, because even within the kind of contemporary art milieu, it tends to replicate the larger system, which is not about care, and there's not a lot of care-filled gestures that happen within this milieu a lot. So again, I open up to anybody who would like to contribute to a thought around that, or a feeling around that.
Sorry?
Go.
Sure. I'm going to tell a very quick story of how we started Love Intersections. Okay, I'll do my best. So in 2014, I was an Out in Schools facilitator. Out in Schools does anti-oppression workshops in high schools across BC. Jen Sung, who's also the co-art director of Love Intersections, was running Out in Schools at the time. And Out in Schools sat on the Vancouver School Board's Pride Advisory Committee. And at the time, the school board was doing a routine update of their homophobia policies to include, basically these were just really old, dated languages around homophobia that didn't include gender, didn't include language around trans inclusion as well. And during that routine update, the update caught wind of conservative religious groups, particularly evangelical Chinese Christians, a community that I grew up in. And what happened out of this huge controversy was a really traumatizing situation where over a week-long community consultations with at the school board, people who looked like my mother, who looked like my aunts, who were opposed to the policy, were sitting across from me. And at the same time, the people that were organizing to pass the policy, who were predominantly white and waving rainbow flags, we started hearing a lot of really racist comments about Chinese people. So, for example, what's so conservative about your culture, or what's wrong with your culture? And we started Love Intersections out of a desire to voice this frustration and racism within the queer community. But we also wanted to, because one of the things we were noticing from the controversy was that one thing that was being overlooked in the media was that the parents that were organizing against the policy and for the policy had some similar intentions, although, you know, politically opposite. And that was that they loved their children and they all wanted their children to be safe. And so and we felt that the ways that was being over something that we wanted to also remember and capture as well, and that goes to those to the conversation around relationality too, and sort of the relationship building that oftentimes at the time I was forgetting in my activism and organizing, and so that's why we called it Love Intersections, and not just to explore through arts intersection identity, but to also think about it through a lens of love and relationality as well. And so we try to, in all of the ways, in the work that we do, try to center that relationship and relationality and love within the community, even though the topic of race and racism and is challenging, but not to lose sight of those pieces in our community as well.
You said care, but also ternura, like tenderness, love, you said love. Love in Spanish, it has so many words, like there are hundreds of words that we say to define like the different levels of love or care or in one of our dinners, because one of the most important things of being here is spending time here in the gallery, like reshaping the gallery with Jess, with you, like here. And I feel like we've been talking about it every single time, every day. Like you mentioned a couple of days ago, like there is no time to be together anymore. No, like we have no any other option to take care of each other. No, like we need to be more closer at different levels. No, and this is what I feel here. It's about tenderness and care and love and resilience. Resistance, but also I feel like this is every day I have to wake up as a woman of color, queer. I'm not anymore from Colombia, from Venezuela, from here, because I have accent wherever I go. So it's always the other. So how you have to reinvent yourself every single day. You know? And even if you try to be part of whatever is called system, then what you become when you are inside of the system. So it's like we need to reinvent different ways of, as you said in the text, it's not about just how I wear, because I already designed everything that I wear, as you do. You know, like it's about how we relate each other and with human and non-human, and it's about relations. No? But, yeah, and it's not about language anymore even. Hmm? Yeah.
I guess care for me usually comes through humor. I try and make pretty funny work when I can, just because that's how we get through. Yeah, I really felt earlier when you were talking about, I'm not sure exactly how you worded it, but like talking about just making art no matter what's going on, being able to just do the work because you have to, because it's also how you're going to survive. I find that a lot of art has been very, very life-saving for me. I had like a very shitty 3 years where I lost a lot of people that were very close to me. In this 1 year, I lost my grandmother's sister, one of my great aunts, and my mother's brother, who was one of my few father-type figures in my life, within the same day. And I didn't realize until like last year that I've been kind of just in survival mode since then. And I do my best to be as engaged and honest. And when I say honest, I mean honest about how I'm feeling, honest about what I'm thinking, and present with people. And I try and be that way every day in the way that I live my life. And yeah, it didn't occur to me until recently that I've also just been in survival mode, and how much I've been able to do just in survival mode. But also, like, as Indigenous people, we're living in an apocalypse. Everyone else's utopia and present that seems perfectly normal is our apocalypse. Not even post-apocalypse, we're still in it. And so that's just like how we've had to deal for the past 250 years. And yeah, I think like a lot of what's helped me get through has just been being able to make art. I've worked with Amanda Spotted Fawn and making stop motion animations, and that it amazes me that I couldn't be more grateful or happy like while I was doing it. Apart from the fact that like there's so much death in my family, and so much that was weighing on me at the time, but also that work, that art was also why I'm still alive. I find that like, yeah, just being able to make work is the care.
I don't know if I have anything much more rich to add other than this morning. I sort of like half shit my pants, and I was thinking about like the ways bodies can kind of remind us of their existence, and like how there's a lot of insecurity tied up with, I guess I want to say like intellectualized ideas of no one laughed at shit my pants, sorry. Like, you know when you think it's like, it's fine, I can still go back inside. I literally just left the house. Anyway, but yeah, just thinking about, yeah, back to what you were saying at the onset, like the disconnect of like this like idea that we can intellectualize our way into like notions of love and care, and anyway, and how that maneuvers in institutions, and how comfortable and comforting it can be to be allowed to like poop yourself and talk about it, or like help someone else who just pooped themselves. I don't know why I'm talking about poop. Anyway, so yeah. But anyways, thank you everyone else for what you contribute.
I might open up to questions in the audience first, but I wanted to just extend the invitation to the four of you if you have any sort of questions for each other, or around each other's practice or anything like that. Or just a comment about something you heard from the couch earlier, you know? No, everybody's good. Well, then we could open it up to the floor if people have questions for the artists.
Maybe many people here, as well as Canada's artists, are on the way to being artists, hoping to be artists. But I don't think any of us know, and I'm not saying you're putting it on that you do know, but I don't think anyone here knows how to bring us together. But we, us being, say, the number of people in this room, like we all want to create a different way of being with one another. Well, I do anyway. And yet I feel like we're really at a loss as to how we go about that. So I would like that to be acknowledged by all of us here, because I don't believe that it's up to artists to point the way of putting us in a better place. I mean, if that happens to happen through someone's work for a few people, that's fantastic. But I think it's a big burden to put on anyone in these apocalyptic times. So that's all.
It's a big burden too. I think it's too big of a burden to put on people. And I also think it's a bit presumptuous. Not saying you're being presumptuous, but I think as a human species, we're so presumptuous to think that we are going to be the ones that guide ourselves out of this. I actually personally don't think it is. I think it's the earth. And we just have to keep opening spaces for the earth to guide us, you know? And this is the work that I'm trying to do. And it's like, how do you listen to the earth? How do you have that again, this exhale capacity to actually hear what the earth is telling us, you know, and revealing to us? Because I think we always think in terms of binaries. We can only do this or this, or you know, this kind of, our colonial entitlements, our colonial habits have, you know, given us this little tunnel vision that we only have certain ways out of things, and we're missing out on a multitude, like thousands, millions of options that if we recalibrated these senses, we'd be actually attuned with, and we could start moving in different ways. And some cultures are a little more attuned, others not so much. But we all historically had these practices that actually, these embodied practices that had us connected to a different way of moving, you know. And so I think a lot about this, and I think about, I mean, you know, my skill set, you know, was kind of very focused on the arts the last 20 years. So I'm just trying to think of ways that I could help just move things around, maybe bring back some of these recalibrate or restore some of these capacities. And you're right, it's maybe not necessarily art's job, but it's the for me as a curator programmer, it's all I know right now. You know, it's my only way of working towards that. So when I'm invited, when an invitation is extended to a place like this, then I'm going to try inject, like, you know, like I like to call it like medicine. I think some of the work here, it's medicine. It's actually trying to inject medicine into a very unwell system. You know, like even contemporary art, even though it can be transformative, it still replicates a very harmful system for a lot of different bodies. You know, and so I like to see the work as medicine, and that's why I just really, I'm so happy I encountered your work in particular, because it's called Listen to the Earth, you know? Mm-hmm. It's just a very profound, very understated, and a very small but very powerful gesture.
Also in the metaphor, it's the indigenous people that you're going to listen to.
Yeah.
So listen to me. Just do what I say.
you have a question, Valerie?
I had a question, if any of you can speak about, to me, it is this earth consciousness that I feel very strongly as elements in all your work. And even in Jess's work, there's this architectural missingness of the earth. The earth doesn't have steps very often, but yet architects are kind of addicted to that. And it's about bringing the earth consciousness into our hearts from your work. That's what I feel. And I wonder if you can talk about if that's part of the consciousness that you're thinking about in these works. And especially the idea of architectural space. I'm constantly offended by that also. And
I won't talk here, but yeah, I'm getting invited into the Gardner Museum to create a set of 3 ramp sculptures. I've thought a lot about how natural the slope is as a shape in nature, and how weirdly we get obsessed with staircases. There's a particular staircase, if you're familiar, in the Art Gallery of long day, Art Gallery of Ontario, that Frank Gehry made, that's entirely just does not function well. I don't even know what floors it goes to, but everyone, I did an 8-week endurance kind of performance there, and people, all sorts of public folks come in to look specifically at this staircase and take photos with it, which is so interesting to me in terms of like trying to think about, a lot how we forget that architecture is made, and it's made by specific subjective folks, and try to make what we refer to as objective voices, force them to be subjective, I really like how you phrased that as well, because I think about that a lot, like how to kind of make the natureless and manufactured have feelings and personify it to give it the insecurity that it is made with, Thank you for your question.
When you ask, but I was thinking about feeling. Every time now, from now on, every time that I will say thinking, I'm gonna feel about you. That was a good comment. Thank you. I was feeling. I'm obsessed with medicinal plants, especially the ones that grows in cracks. No. The wrong name weeds. So the weeds are everything that are kind of ugly, or those plants that are kind of ugly, and they grow between the places where they shouldn't be there because are dirty. But actually, they are growing in places where are needed for the land. So they grow to clean the land that it's been intoxicated, that it's been destroyed for us, or because it needs certain kind of minerals or nutrients. But also it grows in our houses or close to where they are needed. For example, I was invited to do a work in Taos, and I was obsessed with a little flower, a little white flower. I said, what is that? And then an elder came and said, it's interesting that you are interested in that little one that nobody is seeing it, because the community is not seeing it anymore, and it cures diabetes, or it helps to regulate the sugar in the blood. And the community is dying right now from diabetes. And, yes. So it's a call of the importance of those little messages and help. And the same thing with fungus. Fungus are there, and they're helping us and curing us, and we are still just killing them. Yeah, so we have to feel and listen more and read between cracks.
Dave, you mentioned something about when you started your new piece, you went think it was a sort of art area, and we just kind of were there before really starting to do anything and kind of thinking or not thinking. I'm just wondering if a process like that might help in other kinds of conversations that people might have. I'm just thinking about the first question about how do we do that? How do we move forward? Maybe there's something to be learned from what work we did for other types of conversations or things that people need to. So before they go and start thinking and everything, find a way to start off in a different state of mind.
What Elwood was talking about when Elwood, you said something the other day that really struck with me, that the senses that we're used to, the 5 senses, quote unquote, 4 of them are in our head, right? And what can we do to move down? And of course, I think that's the power of art too, right? That I mean, I think we don't just think in words; we think in images too. When I say fire, we don't think F-I-R-E. We might think flames or a gun firing or something. And so, images have the power to shift feelings, and so does movement and those actions as well, right? And sometimes it's just more fun too. Like, it's not in this installation, but the last chapter we had this crazy idea that was inspired by Beyonce's Formation video, where she's she's leaning outside of the car, and we thought it would be hilarious if Made in China was driven by a white guy in a rickshaw with smoke bombs. And we started with that image and then created a and also then discussed meaning about queer Chinese diasporic identity from that hilarious shoot that we did on the roof of the Sanhua building, and got in lots of trouble for it. But you know, it can also be fun and yeah, on a serious issue too. But
So I wanted to ask a question to all the panelists. What do you have planned for the next year in terms of your art?
For myself, I'm working on performance work and hopefully some video work involving my unceded territory. I left it over there. Hold on, I'm gonna grab it.
nope.
Whoops, I got it. Yeah, so I'm just going to be carrying this around a bunch. Hopefully this won't get stolen too. You just can't leave it unattended. So I'm just going to be carrying this around with me every day. And I have some short films that I plan to shoot with it. Other than that, trying to survive. Hopefully I don't get murdered. I mean, I already have like 2 family members who are part of the missing and murdered indigenous women list. So yeah, just trying to like stay off of that list.
Well, I can say that we're going to continue with the work with my mom. So now we are, as you already know, or you might experience of a closer relationship, the losing of the hair, it is an important and difficult part of the cancer process. So we are now crocheting hair. So we are asking for donations of hair. If you're trimming your hair, a little, like at least if it's this big is enough. And if you feel connected to the work, if you have some message or something that you wanna sent to us, to my mom, and to another people that is gonna see the work later. Please give us a little bag with the hair, your name, and the message. It's gonna become something. We don't know yet what it's gonna be. We are crocheting it. And also, if you remember some of the images, is my mom making a wig. So the idea is now going back to the cancer hospital in Panama, and she's gonna teach another especially women with cancer, how to make their wigs with their own hair. And also as an excuse of getting together and talking about cancer. Hospitals are the difficult part, and is the place where it's more important to talk about this and talking about the other way of doing it and supporting. Yeah. So.
Next year, artistically or otherwise, continue to work on all the relationships in my life, and however that manifests in art or living.
So this film, the documentary, we just finished it 2 weeks ago, and it's going to premiere at the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. And then it's going to be turned into a solo exhibition, actually at the Sum Gallery, that's going to open in Chinese New Year 2020. And then I drunkenly agreed to make, I was having a conversation with Paul Wong and had a bunch of wine a couple weeks ago, and he's doing Pride in Chinatown. And so I agreed to make these. We thought it would be so hilarious to have these like Chinese aphrodisiacs as like a gag table. So I've agreed to make these products that I have to finish in a few weeks. So that's at the Sun Yat Sun on August 1st. Oh, and then we're co-producing with Kelseelan Rivers from Squamish Nation, his documentary Tasnicham Wa Ainuch, which means this language is life-giving, and it's I think it's going to be a feature-length documentary on the Squamish language revitalization movement, and it's going to be filmed entirely in Squamish, or that's our hope. And that's the first time a film will have ever been, the first time a feature-length documentary will be made fully in Squamish, so we're very excited about that. Yeah.
We have time for one more question, if people do.
I was just wondering, it gave the sense that your art's really helped you. Is that true?
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like I've dropped the ball a bit, especially with like recent neo-Nazi activity. One of my de-stressing activities is to make anti-Nazi buttons, which I then just like hand out for free throughout the city, just because like so often we're bombarded with news about white supremacy and like white terrorism that like we're like, oh well, I'm just like at home and I just finished making dinner, and there's like, what are we just gonna go out of our houses right now and like start a rally? Like, no, we have to be safe about the way we organize protests and also make them accessible. So like at 3 or 4 in the morning when we find out there's been another like white supremacist attack on POC, what are you gonna do? So I started making anti-Nazi buttons and patches, and like that really helped me, and I feel like I definitely need to make some more.
Does anybody want to answer or no?
Okay.
Okay. I feel like we're we're closing. So again, thank you all for being here. And I know I think people have alluded to this a lot. Like, people are so busy that we're not really given the opportunity to come together in times like this. And I know that it's a choice to be here tonight, so I'm really thankful for that choice. Like, it does not go unnoticed. I'm really thankful for all of you making the choice to be here and taking time away from your lives, and for the poor artists as well. I really feel indebted that you're here and that you all said yes to being included in this exhibition, and just taking a leap of faith and a leap of trust. And I really appreciate that. So thank you to everybody. Thank you.